Hey everyone, today I interviewed Cassie Hayes. She's the CEO of PremierOpSpot, which is an operations agency. Cassie is a very fun story coming from a family of entrepreneurs and then finally launching her own business after some experience there in the marketing world. We talked a lot about operations and how to make sure that we keep things personable and connect with our clients at the same time that we're automating things to free up some of our time to become the CEO that we really are meant to be. This goes along with a lot of the things that I love to teach and coach my clients. I'm going to share with you here in the show notes as well the Mindset and Strategy Golden List. This is a list of books and podcasts that I love and put together for you. It's going to provide you a wealth of knowledge and inspiration for anyone looking to enhance their mindset and leverage it for creative business entrepreneurship. So I'm excited for you to listen to my conversation with Cassie Hayes, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Accidental CEO podcast, where we bridge the gap between the creativity you love and the CEO mindset you need. I'm your host, Nada Salvatore, wedding photographer and business educator. Find full show notes and resources at accidentalceopod.com. Let's get into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Accidental CEO podcast. I am your host, Nada Salvatore, and today I have Cassie Hayes with me. She's the CEO of PremierOpSpot, which is an operations agency. She's going to tell you all the great things about systems and optimization and all the things that are going to help you in your business to be able to grow, but free up some time to be the CEO that you're supposed to be. So welcome, Cassie.
Hello, I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So tell them where you're joining from and what kind of services do you offer right now to business owners? Who is your client? And then we'll backtrack into your story a little bit.
Yeah, so we're in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. I have to say suburbs and not Chicago because it's a thing around here that you are not allowed to say you're from Chicago if you're actually from the suburb. It's great sort of being close to the city, but still having suburban life. The services we provide, we generally work with one-on-one service providers. So bookkeepers, photographers, marketers, anybody from web designers to copywriters, marketing agencies. And a lot of the work we do involves client experience and the systems and processes that support those. So we do process mapping, we do honeybook setups, a lot of different automations. We also specialize in Airtable and Google Drive. So those are some of the tools we use to sort of create those automations and get everything working nicely together so that, like you said, the CEO can be the CEO and focus on their passion instead of all the redundant tasks that we know we have to do. They have to get done, but we want to make sure that we're freed up to do the things that we really care about. So
right off the bat, do you have a favorite one of those that you mentioned?
Oh, it's so hard. It's tricky. I mean, it's probably neck and neck with Airtable and Honeybook. Airtable is such a great database, and I love it because I'm a visual person and you can organize information in so many different visual ways. But Honeybook for client management, I mean, I just don't think there's a better one out there. So
Good. That's what I use too. So I agree. Share with us a little bit about your journey from being in network marketing to becoming a fourth generation business owner, which is really cool. A lot of us don't have that background. We come from families that have been used to work for somebody else and they looked at us crazy when we say we want to own our own business. But you have a little bit of that in your past. So tell us a little bit about that transition and that story.
it was sort of funny when I launched this business. I was joking that business ownership is in my blood because my parents are small business owners. But then as I was thinking about it, I was like, oh no, actually, it goes back on both sides of my family, multiple generations. So my great grandma on my mom's side had a store on this island called Long Beach Island in New Jersey. And she was the first one to sort of pioneer, she called them takeaway meals, but what we would consider carry out these days, because she knew that back then families would go summer, on the island from New York and Pennsylvania and the surrounding states. And they would go and want to be on the beach and not make meals when they got home. So she would create these casseroles and people would buy them and go home and pop them in the oven and have an easy dinner. So really smart woman. And then on my dad's side, my great grandpa had a painting business. And then what I learned recently was that my great grandma was actually the one who they opened a storefront that was like a paint and paper wallpaper. And she did like all the coloring. So she was the coloring specialist. So she would sort of consult with the families when they came in. And then, my great grandpa would actually go execute and paint people's houses. So my dad worked in their store when he was little. And so, yeah, that was sort of a fun little journey for me to go on. But I also wanted to say thank you for not shying away from the network marketing question, because I feel like it's sort of a naughty word in the online space. And rightfully so, perhaps. I know there are a lot of companies that, people may have been burned by them, or they say get rich quick and it's not. But so if anybody sort of cringed when they heard that, I'd ask you just stay open. I do think that network marketing, especially if you don't have business ownership background, it's sort of a safe playground to like test out entrepreneurship, because all the systems and processes are set up for you, and you can sort of test whether or not it's the right fit for you without having to deal with all the things we do as business owners. Like, are we an S corp or are we an LLC? And do we need a bookkeeping software? Do we need to hire a contract or a lawyer to build our contracts, right? So I did learn a lot from those experiences. Our first network marketing company, I was probably 19. I was really young. And the biggest thing I would say is the concept of self-leadership. I was an avid reader my whole life, but this was the first time that they encouraged us to read like self-help books. And I sort of was like, that sounds so boring, but it like transformed my whole perspective of how I looked at life. A couple examples. There was a book called Personality Plus by Florence Littauer. And I think my whole life up until that point, I was sort of looking at all the best qualities of all the people around me and trying to like emulate those. And so reading that book was the first time that I thought, perhaps it's okay that I'm different from my best friend or from a parent or an aunt or uncle who has a really strong skill set in one area, right? Like, we don't all want to be copycats of each other, and that's a good thing. So that was huge. Another really popular book we read was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know, have you heard of that one?
I've heard, but I haven't read yet.
Yeah, I feel like it's really popular with business owners,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
the mindset around investing and money and things. And then the other one that I think stood out really a lot to me was How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling by Frank Betcher. And it's about sales, but really, I think the more and more you have a business, you realize like sales is life. I don't want to be like a crazy person saying that, but I mean, we all have influence. And so the sort of strategies that he used in that book, and the whole idea is that he was an insurance salesman, and he wasn't just trying to walk into somebody's office and sell them a cookie cutter policy. He would go in and ask them questions, and he would actually listen. And then he wouldn't even pitch them anything. He would like walk away, work on a proposal, and then come back with a customized policy that was in their budget and gave them everything they needed. And they were so blown away by the level of care that he put into listening and actually giving what they needed that his sales went through the roof. And so I just think about that as a concept in life, whether it's a relationship that we have or if it is like a potential lead or client. If we're actually doing our jobs right, we should be listening well and asking questions and really building something that lets the other person know that we care about them, right? So I think that concept is just, again, applicable to all areas of our life.
When anywhere that, if you have a service-based business, if you're not spending time getting to know your client and really understanding what they need from you, then most of the time you're going to be trying to sell them something don't need. So you can't connect with them, you can't sell to them, you can't help them. So yeah, very important concept of spending the time to really understanding what your client needs before you even try to offer something. So, as someone who has launched and scaled the businesses, what do you believe are the biggest challenges that heart center service providers face when it comes to business management?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is that a lot of the time, and the idea of your whole podcast is so perfect, right? Accidental CEO. Like, we launch a business because we're passionate about something and we're good at something, and we realize that we can monetize it. But most of us, except for me, because I'm, it's my jam. Most of us don't love the business management side of things. And so if you are a heart centered entrepreneur, a service provider, most of the time that you're spending developing yourself is probably going towards developing your actual skill, like the thing that you're good at. I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day, and whoever your guest, you guys were talking about your equipment and your different cameras. I was like, I have no idea about any of that, right? But I love me a good dashboard. Like I can build you a dashboard like it's nothing. So I think it's just that your focus, rightfully so, is on the thing that you're good at and the thing that you're delivering to your clients. And so you just sort of have a lack of knowledge of what tools and systems are going to support you well in what you do. And so I think most people are on a spectrum. I like to say you're either on analysis paralysis side, which is you don't know and you're so overwhelmed that you take no action at all. And then on the other side, we have like the shiny object syndrome people, which are like, ooh, I saw a Facebook ad for this. And ooh, my coach said to do this tool. And ooh, my best friend in business is doing this. And you sort of pull all the triggers on all the things. And you're looking for a silver bullet, but you don't take the time to really think about what do you need as a business owner in your, with your lifestyle and considering your season of life that you're in. And so I think the goal is to really find a spot in the middle where you can try some different tools and use their free trials and test them out and see if they're a good fit for you. But, and also, you don't want to take no action because taking no action gets you nowhere, right? So finding that middle space where you can think strategically through what it is you actually need. So, what I usually recommend people do is sort of before they pull a trigger on anything, right? Think about like, what do you actually need? So, you're going to have a few different categories. You're going to have your basic functionality, like what type of tool are you actually looking for? So, for example, HoneyBook is a client management tool. I was looking for something that would be an all in one as much as possible. But we also have to know that no one system is perfect ever. And there's no one system that will be able to do everything you possibly want it to do. That being said, you want to think about what are your non negotiables. So this might not be so much features or functionality, but it would be something that would disqualify a tool from being right for you. So for me, for example, the example I use is HoneyBook had an app. I was looking at a lot of different tools, and the ones that didn't have an app, immediately I disqualified them because I'm a mom of 4 kids. I needed to be able to like quickly grab stuff in the car line and picking them up and at a track meet. And so I wanted to make sure that that functionality was available. And then the other list you want to make is your nice to haves. These are things that maybe wouldn't disqualify something, but if you were down to 2 tools, if one tool had these nice to haves and the other one didn't, you're going to go with the one, right? So it sort of helps you filter. So then what you can do when you have those features outlined and all of the different things that you're clear in your brain about what you need, I like to build a spreadsheet, but you could do it on a piece of paper, whatever works for you, and have the different features. And then you can list that out and compare them. I think I'm a gut person, so I do like to make decisions based on my gut if I'm not careful. But what I have learned is that when I have data that backs up sort of my gut feeling or reaction, it helps me a lot more. So having a little bit of both is really helpful. Again, to feel confident in your decision. And I think sometimes we get shiny object syndrome because, again, we haven't done the work of really understanding what we need. So when you take the time to think strategically about that ahead of time, then whatever tool you choose, you're not going to second guess yourself quite as much because you put all the time and effort into all that work and leaning into the tool that you really think will serve you best. So
I love that. I really like the concept of thinking about what you don't want, what disqualify a system or program that you're going to be using, because that's, if not just as important, even more important. Just like when you look for somebody that it's going to provide you a service, that should be things that are absolutely non-negotiable. When you're looking for a house, if you don't want 2 floors, you don't want 2 floors. There's no reason to go with a house that has more than the amount of floors that you want. You don't want to be dealing with stairs. So why would you do that to your own business? Why would you settle for something that doesn't have what you offer, but especially that's not going to help you provide the kind of service that you want to your client? So I like that you reminded everybody to look in it that way as well.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I see often is people asking what tool do you use to create proposals, right? So this is another example of like an immediate disqualifier. A lot of people will answer Canva. And so for me, can you make a beautiful proposal in Canva? Sure. But can the client do anything with it? No. So again, to me, it's like I want every touch point I have with a client to help move them a step further on the journey. And sending a Canva proposal is great, but it doesn't move them any further in their journey. So that's why I love HoneyBook and some of those other tools where the client can literally take an action. And it's still pretty. Like it's a beautifully branded document, so you get the best of both worlds.
So I know you have a passion for automating redundant tasks. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Can you give some examples of maybe some of those tasks in a small business and how automation will really help them transform their operations?
Yeah, so I think depending on whether you're a solopreneur or you have a team, you can sort of go a couple different ways. So we'll start with solopreneurs, and this one really applies to everybody. I went to the HoneyBook Summit in December, and they shared a stat with us that 86% of people or leads will go with the vendor or business that responds to them first. 86%, right? And so I think about how important it is that we have that immediate touch point with leads because up until that point, they have probably already been exploring other options, right? And so I think also that back in the day before we had online businesses, it was really easy to just drive down the road and see, oh, that business is closing down, right? Like the sign comes down, all the lights are off. But now with online businesses, there are some that maybe have bought a domain for 5 years, but then they shut their business down at year 3. And so if you don't have an immediate response, then someone might think, oh, maybe their business isn't open anymore, right? So it's really important to like instill confidence in your clients. I was working with an interior designer yesterday, and a lot of her business is drummed up at home shows. And so, similar, I'm sure, to photographers, if you're a wedding photographer and go to wedding shows, think about how many different booths those couples are walking around. And so, if you don't immediately send them something, you're going to get lost in the shuffle. And so, having that first like email nurture sequence set up is really important. And my interior designer was hesitant about this because she, like me, is very authentic. She's like, I hate automated emails. So I said, yes, and use a tool like HoneyBook allows you to drop the client's name in, so that's personalized. And you can craft the email in a way that it reflects your messaging and your, brand voice or your tone, and it sounds like you. And you can craft it in a way that, again, lets them know what to expect next on the journey, as opposed to just having it be like a system. Thank you, we received your inquiry, and have it be really dry. So I think that's really important.
I was going to say automated doesn't have to be disconnected, right? It doesn't have to lose the brand voice and the brand identity just because you're making things easier and faster.
Yes, that's so good. And I think my philosophy with systems and automations is always that we should automate the things we can so that we can spend most of our energy on the things that we can't, right? Like, let's free up time to build relationships, to go after more sales and more leads, and then also deliver and work on our craft and be the best at what we do instead of having to retype a proposal every time or recreate an invoice every month or whatever. Those are all things that we have to do. But if we can make them easier, that's going to be, again, allowing us to focus on the important thing. I do have a new list of 10 things that you can automate in your client experience. So I can give you the link for that. But that has a lot of those different things in that first part of clients working with you. For example, you can have it create a Google Drive folder for the client or create a task to do any number of things that have to be done every time in your client process. I have a zap between my HoneyBook and then Airtable. And every time a client makes a payment, it drops in there. So then what I can do is connect it with each client. And then my team fills out a form for requesting payment and they link it up with the client. So what that helps me to pull is a P&L on every single client based on, what have they paid and what has the team tracked time against. And so things like that help us get data that will help us make good decisions are also really good things to think about and automate.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of good quality data that can be pulled out of automations. And, if you're not making decisions looking into that, then you're just throwing things in the wall and hoping that they will stick. And that's probably not the best use of your time and resources when you are trying to grow a business, especially if you're a solopreneur. So definitely be mindful of using your time and resources and money wisely by making good decisions based on data too. Today's episode is sponsored by the Delegation Secrets How to Let Go and Scale Your Business course. Are you ready to scale your business without burnout? As an entrepreneur, you're juggling everything. Client work, marketing, admin, finances is exhausting. You build your business from the ground up, but it's time to ask yourself, how long can I keep doing it all on my own? What if you could free up time for higher level activities that truly make the needle move in your business? What if you could scale without sacrificing your sanity? It all starts with one word: delegation. The Delegation Secrets course comes with 6 different modules, and you learn everything from the mindset of delegation to identifying tasks you should delegate, build a trustworthy team, effective communication for seamless delegation, tools and processes for efficient outsourcing, and measuring success and scaling further. Let's break free together. You can find more information on accidentalceo.co/delegate-course. Now back to the episode. So I want to talk a little bit about your experience with Natural Health Company. You had a very impressive result. I think there was a reaching of 20K in sales per month. Let's talk about some strategies that you employ to achieve that kind of growth.
Yeah, so I do have to preface this with, right, our first network marketing company, again, learned so much, but financially made like negative, right? Like it took us the wrong direction. So this was the second network marketing company I was a part of. And therefore I said no like 5 times before I said yes. So just to give you like an idea. But the reason that I finally said yes was because I was literally a walking billboard for the company. I mean, I think when we think about products that we can buy in the stores, we often will, maybe not so much commercials anymore, but when I was growing up, it was like a commercial for Quaker Oats or for Clorox or something. And it would promise us certain things. But then when you go buy that product from the store, you would take it home and it wouldn't quite have the results that they promised. And with doTERRA, I felt like it was the opposite. They weren't promising anything specific necessarily, but when I started using them, I just was blown away how well they worked and so much better than the other products that I was using prior to that. And so I think the key thing there is that it was authentic. Like I believed in the product and I just naturally was sharing about them from a place of, man, this is so great. I can't believe I didn't know about it sooner. And everyone should know about this because it's improved my life, right? It was a literal transformation. And so I think that was the first thing, really wanting to share the experience I had with other people. And then I think using that to build relationships. And again, authenticity is just really important to me. And so as we were, talking to different people, I really took the time, sort of like that book I was mentioning, to sit with somebody and listen to what their main ailments were, recommend what oils or products would be best to help them with those things, and then take a look at their budget and craft something that sort of ticked all the boxes, right? And that's another really good sort of argument for data because I would, work with people and say, okay, if you wanted everything, here are all the products you could buy. And then oftentimes they'd be like, yeah, but that's not in my budget. So then we just sort of keep working until we got to a place where they had the things, at least very basic, that they needed. It fit in their budget. They felt comfortable with it. And again, I think that expressed care. Like I wasn't just trying to convince them that first option was the best one, but I would like even sometimes put a little tiny spreadsheet together that wasn't overwhelming, but it would compare, if you bought this, here's how much it would cost. And if you bought this, here's how much it would cost. And then they would get to choose from those 2 options. So I think that made a big difference in sales and then relationship building. And another thing we did that was super fun was regular education. So my team and I would craft a whole class around whatever doTERRA's product of the month was. And then we'd do a make and take for our clients. So those were things like after sun spray, or before the holidays or before teacher appreciation, we would do like sugar scrubs that people could gift. And so it was really fun. And it was a way for us to, again, educate our existing clients about the products and then also inform them about sort of some complementary ones. So that, again, increased loyalty and increased sales. And they could always bring a friend, which could then, again, lead to new sales. And then I think, again, development was a huge one. I took a coaching thing for sales that was so good. I mean, she gave us homework, each week in between the calls, but then on the calls, it was like we were digging down deep. Like, why do you have a problem with selling this? And it was like a counseling session. So I think making those investments really helped me to move my mindset in the right direction. And then I would say, again, team was so great. I was using Zoom before it was cool. I feel like I was the pioneer of the person that was like, 45-minute limit, everybody just click the link again. Like I did that far before the pandemic. But it was fun to build a team and be able to, celebrate some of these women who were also moms and who were making progress towards their goals and contributing to their family's finances. And the last thing I would say was data and strategy. So doTERRA, I feel like their compensation plan is probably one of the best ones that's out there. And they really enable you to do things strategically in a way that helps you get to the next rank. Whereas I think with a lot of other companies, it's just solely based on sales and recruitment. And so it was so fun when we were trying to reach new ranks. Like I had my big whiteboard in our family room, and this part of the team has this volume coming in, and we expect these new enrollments over here, and sort of moving things around so that we could all be as successful as possible. So those are a few things that we did that were really fun.
So it looks like leadership is a significant part of your success. How do you define effective leadership, and especially in the context of small businesses and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting when especially if you're a solopreneur, because oftentimes when we think of leadership, we think of someone who's leading a lot of people, right? And so when you are a small business owner, I think it has to start with self leadership, which also requires self awareness. And so a few different things or ways that you can become more self aware and begin to lead yourself better are coaching, getting feedback, taking some different personality assessments, listening to podcasts. I think that really understanding who you are and how you're wired, and also understanding where your rough edges are. Like, where do you have some of those things? Maybe it's hard for you to have difficult conversations with clients if they're late on an invoice, or even sales conversations I think are such a great example of this. I had a client or a potential client that I met with maybe a month ago. And I think Honeybook's great about this because they make a joke out of it, but like they sort of ghosted me, right? Like I was like, man, that conversation went really well. And then I just did not hear back from them. And I finally got an email back from her today. And she basically was like, we're really excited and think you're the right person, but I think we need this instead. And I was like, great, like I can work with you on that. But instead of I think our tendency sometimes is to believe that when we get ghosted, there's something wrong with us instead of, right, like sort of believing the best. Like they're business owners too. So maybe they're very busy. Or if you're a wedding photographer, or even a family photographer, if they have more than 2 kids, they're probably really busy. You know what I mean? So just being aware that like the other person on the other side is a human and has a life other than just responding to your proposal. So understanding where those rough edges are, some different skills that you can hone and develop, I think are key.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I think, like you said, understanding where are your strengths, and then looking for that coaching opportunity to develop the rest. Because if you can even see where the flaws are, how can you work on fixing things? So that's where a lot of coaching come into place, and why I love doing one-on-one coaching with my clients is really sitting down and trying to figure out where is the need for help coming from? Where do you think you're lacking? Where can I see that things are lacking by just analyzing and assessing the systems that are in place, the mindset that's in place, and all that together, and then come up with a good plan to be efficient and get you to where you want to be. But very important to do some self-reflection and understand that so you can look for the right coach for you and take care of all of that so you can continue to grow.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is if, like, for example, I've had a sales coach, in one season and then different types of coaches in different seasons. And your business will follow, sort of whichever type of coach you have. So I like to think of this concept of having like a personal board of directors where you're going to have some seats that are like always there or more longer term, right? So, like my husband, I would consider he's like on my board of directors, or I have some really close friends who were also coworkers. They know my skill set, they know my strengths, they also know my weaknesses, they know where I can get stuck or hung up. My counselor, I would say, is part of that board of directors. And then I have some seats where like they sort of rotate out every, couple seasons or couple years. And it's based on your development and growth, right? So you might have a coach for a season that helps you sort of get over something that was really hard. And now that you've built that skill, you can move on to something else. And so making sure that you have both, right? Invest in a coach that helps you with where you are currently. And then make sure you have those trusted people who really know you and you can trust them to give you good feedback and sometimes hard feedback with love so that you can, keep growing in the right direction.
Can you dive a little bit more into the circumstances that led to the launch of your current business after your role was eliminated? Maybe how did that experience shape your approach to resilience in your business?
I'll give a little bit of background of what I did because I think the work that I did there before my position was eliminated has a lot to do with, what I do now. I was in operations and I worked at our church for 7.5 years. And we were, I guess, what you would call a mega church. We had like 6, 7 locations. And the location I worked at was the largest. So when I started there, I think our weekend attendance was like around 10,000 every weekend. And so when I started, I was responsible for like this little piece of our community support. And then several times while I was there, we reorged and they would say, okay, we're eliminating like 3.5 people. And now it's just you, like you're responsible for all of that. And so a couple times was okay because, I am a pretty high functioning person and I could manage it. But for example, one of the times I had just come back from maternity leave after having our fourth son. And they were like, okay, now on top of doing all of that work, we're also giving you this new initiative. And I was like, sleep deprived. I was not a nice person in that season. So thankfully, we were able to sort of shift things around again. And the season that I was probably at my best was when I was able to be very entrepreneurial about solving problems for our team. We would come together as a team and identify this is the thing that's hard or this is the initiative that we want to do. And then I had complete and total freedom to just go set up a system that worked best for my entire team and helped like pave the pathway for us to get there. And so I think that's where that creative problem solving comes from. Once we reorged a couple more times and they handed me more and more things, they were making another decision about how they were shifting the entire organization, which I honestly think a lot of the changes they made were really good. And I didn't disagree with them. But what happened was because they were making them, I sort of lost my authority. So we talk a lot about like responsibility and authority, right? In an ideal situation, your authority matches the responsibility that you have. And when one gets out of balance, there can be resentment or there can be power struggles. And so the responsibility was really high, but suddenly my authority dropped. And so it was really hard for me as a business owner type person to live in that world where I believed in what we were doing, but there was just a lot more red tape than there had, was before. So that was the first time that I was starting to realize, I think my soul is not well. I think I need to do something else and maybe I need to be released from working here. And so the beautiful part about it was if my position hadn't been eliminated, I probably would have had to stay because we wouldn't have been able to afford for me to just walk away. But because my position was eliminated, I had a beautiful financial care package. So going into launching my business, I was basically coming off of like a 6 week sabbatical where I got to hang out with my kids over the summer and then launch the business from a place not of panic or lack or scarcity, but hey, if this doesn't work out, like we still have this, financial care coming in. And so it really helped me to launch my business from a perspective of I'm going to try this and test it out. And I think I know what people might need and small business owners might need, but it gave me a safe sort of period of time to test that all out and get launched before, feeling really panicked.
Yeah, that's good. That's good that you had that to fall back to, but also that you brought all those skills that you developed for so long and were able to apply it into your own business.
Yeah. And I think that's where the dream came from was probably about a year before my position was eliminated, thinking about all the small business owners that like I have friends who are small business owners and again, being fourth generation, I know that they wear like 10 million different hats. You know what I mean? And it's like most of the people I know, again, I would consider them heart-centered. They care about what they're doing. They care about providing an excellent experience. They care about giving back to their community. And they just need someone to help them, you know? And so I love being that person. It's really fun.
So I know you have a really good ability to create and streamline user-friendly systems. Can you maybe share an example with us that where you have developed or apply a system that particularly improved something maybe for you or your client and that you're really proud of?
Yeah. So I think with the HoneyBook setups and optimizations, those oftentimes are more intangibles. Like the client gets, a lot of time back. One client we're working with right now is a caterer, and she's like, I probably spend 5 hours on all of the pieces of signing a new client, contract, invoice, proposal, customizing everything. So a lot of it comes from that. I think the things that are more measurable are some of the Airtable systems that we've set up. So one of our clients is an insurance agent and they were working on new hires and did not have like a comprehensive system at all. And so when we implemented everything into Airtable, they saw a 50% increase in the number of qualified candidates that they had simply because we put in a system, right? And that weeds out the people that aren't willing to fill out a simple form, right? So if they're not serious enough to fill out a simple application, they're probably not going to be a good fit, right? And so that was a really cool one. Another thing that I do for clients is ops audits. So we sort of take a look at what do you have currently and can we eliminate things or do we need to add things so that you can have more automations? And so for one of the clients, we found her $159 a month in savings. And it was like something silly, like she was paying for 10 Zoom licenses and she only needed one, it was like very odd. And so again, as business owners, we get so busy that if we don't schedule in time to strategically sit in that CEO seat, we might miss some of those things. And then we sort of just, oh, well, this is just the way it is. And this is just what my expenses look like. And so those are fun.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing those with us. So tell me a little bit more about relationship building. Definitely crucial in any kind of business. How do you approach relationship building with your clients or just people around, given that we're in such a virtual, situation nowadays and how we communicate and connect with everybody?
Yeah, so I do think that spending the time up front to set up some of those automations and have like email nurture sequences does sort of set the stage for that to happen, right? And then I think I am definitely more of a relationship. I mean, I think you need to start with your values first, right? Because if you're like selling a product, you might not have like a discovery call with every single person that buys your product, right? So, first, to just back up and say, depending on what you're selling, whether it's services or products or whatever, you might look at this a little differently. But for me, again, I think it comes back to authenticity and really caring about the person, wanting to understand where they're coming from, having some systems in place that ask them questions ahead of time so that by the time I do get on a call, we do have a little bit of time to say, like, hi, how are you? And where are you from? And getting to know each other on a human level as opposed to just talking business, I think goes a long way for building trust. And again, that's going to lead to more sales, of course, but that really makes a big difference. The other thing I would say is with my team, we have some different, again, we can use the systems to support our values, right? So we have a channel in Slack that's a stand up. If you think of being in an office, a stand up meeting is usually like quick meeting at the beginning of the day where everybody goes around and says, what are you doing today? And are there any blockages that you have? And so for our team, we're all moms. And so that's more of like a personal check in like, hey, what do you have on the agenda today for the agency, but also at home? Because when we can come into the day knowing that, we're better able to respect one another's boundaries. We're able to adjust our expectations of one another, and we can pivot if we need to for, if something comes up or somebody's sick. And so really having sort of that compassion and understanding again on a human level, as opposed to just having everything be business, which maybe is funny for a systems person to say, but it works a lot better when you have real people.
No, I really love that concept. I think it helps you again, you be a better leader because you're incorporating the needs of your team into the day-to-day operations. So I would still count that as operations and systems and it's just you being human and personable and a good leader. So looking towards the future, how do you see the landscape of operations and automations kind of evolving? Maybe some new opportunities that you foresee for small businesses. Do you have anything in mind?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one that comes to mind is AI. I mean, every single tool that we're using currently is coming out with an AI feature, which isn't bad. A lot of them are pretty awesome. So I would say the caution that I would, give to everyone is don't pull triggers too quickly. Check if your existing tools have the capacity to do what you want it to do or what you might hope that it could do before you go pull the trigger on a new tool. And I mean, have fun with it. It is fun sometimes to try out some new things and see. But I would say that the more tools we add into our tech stack, the more context switching we're going to have to do, right? And that can really weigh on our mental capacity and our ability to, again, think strategically and develop our skills and build relationships with clients. So I always, it's fun to play around with things, but then sort of pause and think about, is this tool going to fit in nicely with my existing tech stack, or is it going to distract me because now I'm going to have to learn a whole new thing? And I think AI, again, is great in a lot of ways in that it can speed up our process. It can help us if we have a blank slate and we just need a starting point. But again, we should make sure that all the tools are helping us really build relationships where they matter instead of replacing the relationship building, right?
Cassie, tell me, what is your definition of success?
It's a good question. It's different today than it would have been if you would have asked me like 3 years ago, probably. Our kids are getting older. So for me, success is having the flexibility in my schedule to be able to move things around and be there for them, to be able to work when I need to, but also not, so that I can, go to track meets and musicals and dance competitions. I think it's also being able to live out supporting my husband in the way that he needs. When I was working full time, I mean, he really took a lot of the mental load off of me. I think as moms, we talk about that all the time. Like, husbands don't understand the running list of 10 million things in our head all day long. But he like really stepped up to the plate and helped with a lot of that stuff. And he is transitioning and in a new job now. And so I love that I'm home and able to like prep the coffee to auto brew because he leaves before any of us wake up, or make sure that he has meals that he can take to work instead of buying McDonald's or something. So I think that's a big one. I think as I get older, it's also making time for the things that really matter, even if they're not income generating. So, I'm in a small group. We just had our last meeting last night, making sure I'm having time for friends and doing breakfasts or coffees. We're going on a trip for my girlfriend's 40th birthday this summer, just like a short little trip, because imagine four moms that each have at least 2 to 3 kids, trying to coordinate schedules, but it's really, having the space and time and energy and money to create memories with family and friends and do things that matter and not be busy with the things that don't.
I love that. That's a great definition. Tell everybody where they can find you if they want to work more with you and just learn more about what you have to offer.
Thanks. So my website is PremierOpSpot.com. So there are 2 S's, OPSSPOT. And I do have a blog there. So if you're interested in learning more about how to maximize like Google Drive and Workspace or Honeybook, I have lots of different tutorials and blog posts there. And then the social media platform I'm on primarily is honestly just my personal Facebook profile. So you can just go search up Cassie Hayes and you'll see that there probably are a few of them, but mine has my business info, and clearly in the profile and stuff. So I'd love to connect with you there. That's the main way that I usually connect with people online. So
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cassie, for spending some time with us and sharing all the amazing tips of how you became a successful CEO.
thank you. So great to have this conversation with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for listening today, and I hope to see you next week for another episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Bye. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the world where creativity and business strategy collide. I am Nada Salvatore, thrilled to have shared this time with you. Remember, every episode is a step closer to mastering the art of being an accidental CEO. So don't miss out. Hit subscribe, drop us a sweet review, and spread the word to your creative tribe. Your next big breakthrough could be just one episode away. Join us next time for more insights, laughs, and actionable tips. Keep pushing boundaries, dreaming big, and embracing the beautiful chaos of entrepreneurship. Here's to make magic